Hey everybody, Skipper here, and welcome to part 2 of this episode. This is chapters 59 to 74 of Dark Age. We talked for 4 hours, so it had to come out in 2 separate parts. The first part deals with Lysander and Darrow, so if you haven't watched that yet, go back and watch it. It also set the tone for this episode, as we did record it, as if it would be one whole thing. This now being part 2, we get into Lyria and Ephraim. And of course, death and violence, because that's just kind of what Pierce does, as well as our coarse language. But I wanted to reach out and say that this is the episode that will deal with the death of Ulysses. We acknowledge how difficult a subject matter this is, and therefore, if you do not feel you can watch this episode, we completely support you and love you. There's no therapy in space, but there is here on Earth, and so please, if you need to reach out to someone, please go ahead and do that. Thank you very much, and if you can decide to continue watching this episode, enjoy! Back. We're good.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we are moving on. We're leaving the boys, and we're gonna go join the girls.
Yeah.
So at this point, we've got Victra, Volga, and Lyria running through the snow for 2 weeks. They have been surviving somehow in the wilderness. We assume based on Victra, because she keeps making comments. I really like where she's like, you can't build a fire, you can't hunt the deer, like all this, and they're like, you wouldn't let us make a fire. But we're getting the Girl Scouts until we realize the baby's coming, is essentially where this starts.
The dialogue, though, back and
Yeah,
forth between the three of them is hilarious.
So
in
good.
this
I love it
opening.
so much. Again, it's like Victor's like, you can't make a fire, and they're like, you wouldn't let us make a fire. Like, what are you on about? Like,
Or Victor sulks back against the rocks, disturbing the snow and a blackberry shrub above her. Even after 2 weeks of plodding through rain and snow and sleeping under the shelter of trees, she manages to look glamorous. Her jade earrings, which she refuses to remove, blaze against the snow. Meanwhile, I think I've somehow gotten fleas.
This is the part that we keep talking in the den about how, like, Dark Age is so sad. And it's lines like that I love this book for. The comedy that it's, like, weirdly woven in. And it's like, you're supposed to be depressed, but you just take those moments. And, like, this whole element of, like, Victor has finally accepted that Volga and Lyria are not as bad as she thinks they are. And so you get the bonding times with them, and you get these moments, and even we'll get the lead up. Well, Victor's going to give birth, and she's still making, like, snide remarks at, like, sure, the Reds don't cut their own umbilical cords, but, like, it's just done in such a way that, like, to Victra, that is, like, almost that, like, she's trying to relate in a very weird way.
Yeah.
Victra is just, like, she's out there. She's bizarre.
They all are. We've got 3 different colors here with 3 different perspectives.
Yeah.
Another really good one, and I feel like these are worth, since what we're going to get into is so hard, I feel like another one that was really good and stand out. Volga and Lyria are talking, and she says, how do you not choke her to death? And sleet gathers on her eyebrows as she considers it. 2 nights ago, I thought about it after she called me a geriatric walrus, but I did not think it would work. She fought beside Sephi herself and Darrow. No, she is too much for me, even now, unless I was able to shoot her from afar. That was a joke. Oh, her eyes flick left, as was mine. Like that.
That's the freelancer showing through.
Yeah.
It's so good. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I think we've talked about this before. Victra is everything because it's almost impossible not to smile, either because she's just A, badass, B, just incisive. Like, she just will rip into a person, but not in a judgmental way, just like no bullshit kind of way. Or she's
Yeah.
just funny. It's funny. Just she knows herself so well. And we get a really interesting back and forth between her and Lyria when she's giving birth about what you were referencing, the red culture versus the gold culture, and how the red culture distributes the responsibility and distributes the joy, not necessarily joy, the responsibility, the ownership, the pride of bearing and birthing a child. Whereas for gold, it's like, no, I did that. I built this child. For Victra, she says, I built me. I take full ownership of that. Nobody else gets that. That's on me. I get to claim that I built who I am.
Yeah.
It's not because of the culture. Yeah. It's not because of Jen's Julii, although we do see she clearly has somewhat of a soft spot for her lineage. But it's about the tenacity of who she is as an individual. Super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool moment.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, as I said earlier in this, of like, Victor gets, I think, more fleshed out than we've seen her. Because normally she's through the eyes of Darrow, or she's a side character. Lyria gives Victra the full front and center, and it's who we knew Victra was from Darrow, but she's front and center, and she is her own self. She is the most confident person we've seen. I mean, we don't have her point of view. For all we know, she has severe, crippling anxiety. Who knows? But she appears as though that super confident, and like, I absolutely love that we get her in these exactly as we expected her to be. And I think it goes back to, we've seen the Ephraim calling her Victra, oh, I cannot tell a lie, Julii, that like, she can't, like, she's just, this is what it is, clean cut. And so and it's really interesting, this is way back, we were talking in the den, and obviously I'm reading this for the first time since 2019, which is the only time I've read it. I was driving at the time, so I didn't fully pay attention. I genuinely thought the first read through that Victra had her own point of view. And I said that in the den. I was like, well, now that Victra gets her own point of view, and everyone's like, Victra doesn't have a point of view. And I'm like, yes, she does. And it's because Lyria just gives her that space that I genuinely thought parts of this was a Victra point of view. And I absolutely love that we continue with that. And I think Volga as well. We don't see as much of Volga in this because she disappears to try and send the message. But Lyria is very good at giving the people who are in her scenes space to be themselves, and so that we can see them more fleshed out, which I just
what we do get
love.
So Crescent, you go first. I've got mine tapped by my finger.
Mine's pretty minor. I wonder if I don't know if it's necessarily intentional, but maybe it's like Lyria views herself as less important. And so she's bringing these other two women to the forefront because
I don't think that's super minor.
More important than hers.
Like, Pierce is very good at giving each of the people that he writes a very distinct voice, internal and externalized voice. And I know you guys have brought that up before, I think in one of the first fades in this
during Iron Gold we
book.
Talk about it.
Yeah. Or Iron Gold, yeah. And I think that stayed true throughout. It's been very consistent. Even as the characters develop, they develop as individuals. And that is something that I think we had, some point we were talking about that in this discussion, where at this point we're getting to see Lyria And some of these other people step into their individualism, their more actualized selves more, despite all of the hardships that they've gone through.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, as far as Volga goes, we don't get a ton of her, but what we do get from her is, I think, an important parallel to what we were talking about with Alex, who fully trusts Fall into Darrow, and Volga's willing to do the exact same thing. You know, even as shitty of a person as Ephraim has been to her, because she has not been able to reap the benefit of him getting sober and finding himself, right? She still knows 100% that he's got her, and she says it not once, but at least twice, and maybe even 3 times in the first 3 pages of this chapter. She's like, Ephraim will come get me. I just gotta go call him. No, Ephraim will come get me. Let me go call F.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think also Trustfall, like, called her at some point the little golden retriever. That, like, not just Ephraim, but, like, fully is like, sure, Lyria, I trust you. And we see that when, I don't know if it's this section or it's just before this section, where Victor wants to shoot. No, Volga wants to shoot Harmony, and Victor's like, don't do it right now. You're going to give us away. Don't do
she's
it.
willing to shoot Harmony
And
for
so
Lyria.
Volga turns to Lyria and is like, make the call, and just fully listens to whatever Lyria wants. That, yeah, she's our little sweet golden retriever.
Yeah.
But yeah, we don't get much of her, so we get them entering the house, taking over the house. A little sus on where Mom is, because Lyria notices of, hey, there's, I think it's the winterberries or the drink or something is out, so that tells me that there's another person here, but they're not, and like, you kind of get sus, but sure, we trust these people, and at that point, Volga goes to make the call, right? I don't think she's there.
Not quite. Not until Victor actually is
Victor
fully
gives birth.
delivered.
Yeah.
I will challenge that a little bit. I think you're on the right track, Skip. But I almost feel like it's not like they trust the people. They trust themselves to handle the people.
Okay.
Were it to go sideways.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good
like,
call out.
Volga takes parts of their firearms,
guns apart, yeah,
like crucial pieces, and keeps them on her. They're tied
up. Volga
up.
does kind of get a little bit.
Oh yeah,
because they go into the Rat Legion stories.
Yeah, they talk about the Rat War.
But yeah, you're right.
But
yeah,
Victra and Lyria do not. Yeah.
Well, that's my favorite. Is Victra's like talking to Lyria about, okay, who are these people, whatever, and then she's like, please go tie them up. I'm gonna have a baby. It's like her essentially like
as what did she say? And as an unctuous red once told me, we don't know them very well.
Yeah.
Go tie him up. I'm going to have a baby. But did you find, I mean, you guys have read it multiple times. I, on the other hand, I'm pretty much reading it for the first time, that I had forgotten this entire scene. And I, the whole time, something in the back of me was like, I should trust these people, but I don't. And it was about, how, oh, she's mute. She can't, and it's like, that's an easy escape to just claim that the daughter's mute, when clearly they call out of, the glasses sitting there that tells me that, a wife should be around. Can you think back to your first read, and were you suspect of these?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. From the second they met outside, I was like, oh no, that's the bad news.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. The fact that I do remember the fact that she got through delivering the baby, when the first time I read it, I was like, oh, okay. Oh, yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I do remember feeling like we were in the clear and that shit would happen, but the stakes were lower.
Yeah.
for like
Yeah,
a couple pages.
almost feeling like the Red Hand is small time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, like, I guess, like, in the grand scheme, they are. But, like,
But when you're in their
this
camp.
isn't the chapter. Like, this isn't chapters where this is grand scheme. They're in the shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
We get the perspective, like the Juliet perspective on Harmony in this little vignette prior to her delivering fully,
Yes.
which is, alluded to by Harmony, but not fully fleshed out. And then Victra just full on says, that economically speaking, there was no better option than to just let her children die the way that they did, let the people in her mind die the way that they did, and know that Gamma was going to fuck over the other clans.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting part of, I think we get Victra. I don't know if it's remorse, but it's at least acknowledgement of this is what occurred due to my family and how us Golds reacted and people would we knew would react. Like that's a very interesting that we're not usually seeing. Like we look at the rest of the Golds we know. The Telemanises, as far as we know, have never done anything wrong. Mustang, we know Nero did things wrong, but there's no really acknowledgement on how much. This is, I would say, one of the first times that we are seeing a Gold saying, yeah, my family caused this harm. And so, which I think is huge, but then still Victra has that, well, so she's going to kill me. And like, also then equates it to, well, then she killed Severo's dad. So, like, and it's like,
Yeah.
It's a very interesting juxtaposition there of, not quite eye for an eye, but Victra is seeing it as eye for an eye and knows then, well, then she's got the bounty out for me and will kill my child. Because that would be eye for an eye, as I have killed your kids.
Yeah, I mean, Victra does not. I don't think she takes personal responsibility for, because it was her mother,
Yes.
that was under control of the mines, and in her opinion, like the major thing that her mother did wrong is, she says in the beginning of this chapter, well, apparently she didn't have control of enough of the mines or whatever, right? How many mines did you have control of? Not enough, apparently. I think was her comeback.
Yeah.
But for sure, she views all of this as transactional.
Yeah.
It's not personal, it's transactional,
Yeah.
which is interesting because I would probably assume that Harmony would say it's entirely personal and not transactional at all.
Yeah.
What do you think, Crescent?
I personally am not particularly surprised that Victra is the one to be like to own that her family has done this. Like that feels like a very Victra thing. It's like Victra's always been such a straight shooter.
Yeah.
Like Victra, I cannot tell a lie. So.
Yep. But yeah, so then we do get Victra giving birth, which I think was Bold today called out. I'm not gonna lie, I've never been in a delivery room with a baby. I don't know, but Bold asked into the Reaper's room, which is in the Howler's Den. We ask questions we want to bring up to Pierce, and it's like, why do you know so much about childbirth? Because apparently,
yeah.
His sister doesn't have kids, does she?
My sister?
No, his sister.
Blair.
His sister, no.
Blair does not, yeah.
He doesn't have, well, I mean, he has close friends with kids, but I can't see him being in the...
Yeah, I was going to say, I assume he probably wasn't in the delivery room.
There's all kinds of videos.
I was going to say, did we all have to watch The Miracle of Life in grade 9?
Yeah.
Where they, like, graphically showed us. I'm glad that's a North American experience of, like, oh, on The Miracle of Life. But, yeah, they called that out of... But I just really like... I don't know. I could go into the history where she like refuses to lie down and use the bed, and we got into this of the gold
That's
versus
what
the
I was going
reds.
for.
Yeah.
I mean, I was trying to have like a standing
Okay,
squatting. Yeah, like that.
so from a history perspective, do we know that the reason women lie down during childbirth is because one of the kings of France had a weird fetish that he enjoyed watching women give birth? Like that's legitimately why we lie down for childbirth, is because a king in France had a fetish about it. So I can see it of like, if you're gonna go back to the Reds, would continue to have this patriarchal society. We're going to keep it the same. We're going to keep it that the weird king in France continues to have his fetish, rather than the Golds at some point probably looked at the medical and went, hey, if you go previous to probably the 12th century, you're giving birth standing up because that genuinely makes more sense. Like, for a physiological. Okay, now
I mean,
I'm blowing
yeah,
precedent's
isn't
mind,
it
but
crazy? Because even now we have access to
I'm
know the
sorry.
science
Ew.
behind all of that.
Right?
We have
That still to this day we are doing it. But I mean, there's now like the water births and a few other things, but there's like a few people I know who have midwives have been like, you should just stand up during pretty much all of this. But we lie down because there was a king of France who had a weird fucking fetish.
right, and it just also fits into the narrative of diminishing women, like just overall.
I don't know why, but
I'm going to exempt you from that, Crescent.
You're fine.
You
Other than,
get
did you
an
know that
exemption.
the chainsaw was invented for childbirth as well?
Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go. But yeah, so I get it that the Golds would be like, go back to the roots of like, what is the actual like medical, physical best way to give a baby? And the Golds would be like, fucking standing. And then therefore,
Like, what are you
like,
going to bear down on if you
Something about
are
stand and
not
deliver.
standing?
yeah.
Yeah. Um, were you guys surprised that it was a boy?
Yes.
I
I
don't
was
remember.
shocked.
Yep.
I
Because,
don't remember.
like Victra said, at least once, but I think it's 2 or 3 times, she talks about her daughter. Like,
Talks about it in Iron Gold for sure. She talks about it
yeah,
in this chapter at least once, and I want to say there's at least one other reference to it being a girl from Victra as
But then we
well.
learned that like, oh, Severo was right.
yep.
That Sever the whole time said it was going to be a boy. But I don't remember my first read through. On that part, I was driving somewhere in the middle of the Appalachian Mountains at this. No, I was in Vermont for this part.
The all of
Driving through Vermont.
the actual delivery part is tender to me, but um
Tender, but also hardcore.
yeah, and it's easy enough for me to manage my emotions about that, even being a mother myself. But basically from uh basically from the point where Lyria realizes that she's seeing, like, she's so worked up and so activated by watching them that she's seeing them with like thermal vision through the end of this
Yeah.
chapter. I'm just a mess. Like, just like, even right now, like, I'm trying not to shed a
Yeah.
tear because it is. I've got it open in front of me, and it's so. Lyria's perspective, I think, has got to be, if you put yourself in her shoes, she's always been a caretaker. She's always been a person who has been adjacent to children
Yes.
this entire series so far. So there's nothing new about Lyria being adjacent to a child. But I forgot. I'm realizing that I have only just now. I mean, I knew that, but I'm only just now centering that in the forefront of my mind as we're discussing it. That, to me, I have put it in the back of my mind. Okay, yes, it does make sense. She's a red. Yeah, sure. Her sister has given birth to many. She's an aunt many times over. Sure, she's been around. But no, not just that. She loves children. She cares for children. And so this is something for her that is very sacred and special.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then the end with Victra, her benediction is
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely that I just lost it. I'm still losing it. It's really fucking tender, man. I don't know. This is the part, like, honestly, I want to juxtapose the death that happens with this, because I really don't think that as a person who cares for children, regardless of what your role is in your child's life, that um, the manner in which they pass is it doesn't fucking matter. Like if they die, it's fucking traumatic. It doesn't matter if it's quiet. It doesn't matter if it's violent. It's a trauma. There may be layers to the trauma, sure. But I do appreciate what he has done here to bring us into the intimacy of the moment with her, with this benediction and the hope. And I mean, and even in how Lyria greets him, hello, little Himanthus. You know, like there is something so really. I don't like children. I love my son, but I don't like kids. There is something truly magical, though, about a fresh ass newborn little fucking baby. If I swear that if somebody were to put a fresh little baby into anybody's hands, there's a certain biological reaction that happens. I do think Pierce got it. I think he did it. He did a very good job in this last 2-3 paragraphs here of this chapter, setting us up to bear the gravitas of then losing Ulysses.
Yeah. Yeah, well, especially that Humanthus, and it's the way she's greeted all of her nephews and nieces. Like, she's giving that all gone except for Liam. And it's, yeah, there's so much weight to that, of that this is not in her mind just another human. This is someone connected, like Lyria wise, this is someone connected to her. And yeah, like, it's funny. So I mentioned, so the first time I was driving and listening to this, I was coming up, I saw Pierce in Washington, D.C. I was halfway through the book when I saw him there. We talked dragons. And then I was driving from there. I went from there to Boston, which I had another howler in the car. And so we couldn't audiobook because we were in different portions of the book. And so then it was from Boston to Montreal is when I got this. And I was going through Vermont. And it'll be the chapter after this. But me and my reread, I remember viscerally what it was. And we will get there, Ulysses' death. I had to pull over and I was sobbing, dry heaving, like could not, had to be on the side of the road in Vermont. And so this week I went up to a cottage and I was listening to everything. And I couldn't remember if it was the same chapter. Like I was like, where's the chapter break? And it's the moment Lyria's like, so you get the voice actress of like, Lyria, Ulysses. I was like, nope! I am not driving and listening to this again. So I had to put it off and then today listen to it. So I had listened to everything else and then it was like, Lyria, Ulysses. And I was like, oh fuck no. Like, and technically you get to the end of that chapter and Ulysses is alive, we're well. It's the next chapter in which Victra is like, get me snow. I forget what the line is, and it goes back to the comedy.
It aches like a broken tooth down there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, Which I think we've missed some of the other talk about that one. There's some of the other comedic ones where Lyria says something about I would have ripped her out of it if I didn't think that like basically her nether legions would have bitten my arm off. Like I love the fact that she's like fucking terrified of Victra previous to this, but this chapter is just so beautiful. But in my mind, it's very much the next chapter that stood out of this whole book. And it's the one that most people know about. Like people have wrote, like you talk to them.
I have
friend,
two. I have two, with a third being the Day of Red Doves.
yeah, but like this is the one that I know. Alcatraz was. Is it? I feel like Hurricane as well knew this going in. They hadn't read it yet, and they're like, "Well, I know what happens." And my friend Noelle was like, "I know about the baby." Like it's the one thing that I think has circulated over every other spoiler that people know, which is unfortunate, and I try and avoid giving any type
It's
of spoilers,
probably,
but
of all the spoilers though, may be appropriate because losing a child, depending,
yes,
for a
on
lot
who
of,
you
especially
are.
in this particular type of child loss, where I mean you almost could call it, he wasn't a stillbirth. I don't want to go there, but like, but to the level of how abrupt and how
Yes,
short lived things
for
were. You
sure.
know, there's no good way to grieve that because there's no one to share that with. There's
For
not
sure.
even like, she has Lyria. She will eventually have several, one
Yeah.
hopes, but you know, like
But in that
there's
moment, she's got Lyria. And
right.
she doesn't even. She doesn't. She's running. Like we don't get until so this is like chapter 64. It's not till chapter like 75 that Lyria and her are actually able to mourn. She
Oh my god.
cannot mourn for
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe she's in the jail cell later mourning, but she is immediately on the run. We don't know how they got the baby away from her, but she's clearly captive because all we find out is, and this was the part that I immediately was like, steering wheel over to the side of the road of pinned to the tree. Like it
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
brutal. Lyria has to pull the baby down, and Lyria is so taken of it, of like, is just carrying around this dead baby and trying to still keep the dead baby warm. And we don't know where Victra is, but the baby is there. Like, it is, you talk about mourning, like, Victra doesn't get it in that time. She doesn't get it until Ephraim shows up.
Yeah. Yeah, no. And that's, to me, like the spoiler part of it. There's probably a good chunk of women and men who have gone through child loss through various ways that
For sure.
probably should have a trigger warning on this one.
Definitely.
Like,
Yeah, there will definitely be a
Oh, this
disclaimer.
one will get Badger. Every time you're on, we don't get someone else to do the disclaimer. It's me doing the disclaimer in person, being like, "Hey guys, call your therapist." You probably didn't watch the last episode you were on back, but it was me sitting on my couch going, "Hey, big disclaimer," and this is what this episode will get again, because for sure it is something that people need to be reminded. Like we assume if you're watching Fade to Obsidian, you have read it, but it's a big one, and it's not something you would expect in most books. Like Pierce went there. This is the one that I
Yeah.
think he really went there, because the rest you're like, yeah, war. We're gonna get death. We're gonna get rape. We're gonna get a few things. This is the one I think out of the usual.
this there's several moments of him dealing with darker nature of humanity, but this is definitely one of them, and that I do wonder, because it's like, okay, you are well read, you are well studied, you're an intellectual human being, and you're an aware human being, so I know that you're picking up on these things as they exist in the darkness of humanity currently, sure, but what specifically are you drawing from reference? Like, and I just find that to be curious, not from a like grotesque or morbid standpoint, but like as a person who isn't a parent. I wonder where you get some of the insights that you get as a
Yeah.
person. You're like, what is your process for that? Because I think he does a good job.
Yeah.
I'm not in a questioning way. And were there to be things, I know that there have been discussions about like, in the LGBTQ community, like, okay, you have made an effort. It's clear you've made an effort. Could you have made a different or maybe a better effort? Could you still make a different or better effort? Yeah, sure. So where are you drawing resources from there? Like, I think these are valid questions since we have like such amazing access to him. That's just one that came up for me within the child stuff specifically.
Yeah.
Like, where are you drawing a reference from? Just like we talked about earlier with the childbirth aspect of it. It's curious to me, and he could just be a very insightful, introspective, introverted type analyzing Aquarian who is able to extrapolate from reading stuff and then
Well,
right,
reading
right.
stuff, but I mean, if you followed Pierce, and this is the thing, is some people don't like. Pierce used to have thousands of pictures on his Instagram, and then he scrubbed it all. His friend group. So we talk about like, you asked if his sisters had kids. No, but he's got cousins that are young that I feel like, and friends that have young children that he has played that uncle role to. I would not be shocked if someone like, he just seems to have a lot of friends. I know he has a lot of friends you bring up with the LGBTQ group. He's got a lot of friends that fit in that, and so probably give him that insight. And with this, we don't know, like, he probably maybe has seen a friend go through this or one of his cousins that he's got. I think his mom is like one of 10. One of his parents has like 10 siblings. He's got a ton of cousins. So I can see him growing from that, but
That's
at the same
cool.
time,
That's
he
fun.
he does his research. Like, yeah, he used to post pictures all the time of like family reunions, and there'd be like a whole bunch of like 5-year-olds crawling on him. That you'd just be like, meh. Um, so I think he does draw that insight from somewhere. He seems to draw most of that human aspect. That's why he can build such strong female characters, is because he draws them off of real women in his life. But yeah, as you say, like, it's the childbirth part. Like, sure, okay, you can go back and watch The Miracle of Life, but that doesn't tell you what the woman's thinking at the time. But I'm trying to think of, like, I don't know, like, is that, like, would that be seen as rude as if you're writing a book and your friend has a baby to, like, call them up and be like, can you tell me the emotional aspect of that? Like it would
I
just
guess
be
it depends on your
interesting.
relationship with the friend.
Yeah, exactly. But seeing some of those
As a man, it's
aspects.
a little bit dicier, but if you have a good relationship with a woman, I think that is a very welcome dialogue to be had. I mean, come on. Well, the women share that all the time. Like, that's part of that. I mean, that is alluded to in here. I think if anything, that's something that could have been alluded to more. Like, the tendency of women to want to share those things with other women is so strong, and we would totally share that more, I think, with men too, if there were any sort of stated interest.
Yeah.
So if Pierce is that guy showing up for ladies in his life, like giving a shit, I'm sure it's welcome.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it'd be interesting to, and I don't know if we would ever get that answer because especially this one is so personal. I don't know if anyone would ever go, oh, well, the interest, like, I drew it because my friend had a miscarriage or my friend had a stillborn, like, or whatever. Like, I can't see anybody in the public
Talking to
eye
that. Yeah.
just saying, like, oh, well, yeah, I know because of this. In the same way he goes, oh, yeah, women are strong because my mom's strong. Like, he just kind of plays it off that I can't see him answering like that. So I don't think we get that answer. But it is, as you say, a lot of this, it's like, I mean, it goes into that, and then some of the other ones that you're like, how do you know? How do you know what that would like? Because he does do human psyche so well that it's like, what has happened? And there is the famous story of it was during, I mean, this is completely different, but his mom sitting down with him after reading the passage and being like, what's happening in your head? Like, we need to talk. But yeah, it'd be very interesting because, yeah, it's very, what we see in this is not just from the mother's perspective, but the friend perspective as well. Like, it's Lyria is who we actually see grieving, and then the assumption on Victra is what I would say.
Crescent, when you're reading this and you're emoting and you are having a connection, uh, first first I feel like, tell me how you felt the first time you read through the two chapters as a couplet, and then also specifically through the loss, what stands out to you. And it doesn't have to be, you could still take that as a couplet between the two chapters, because if you need to compare contrast, that's valid. But like, what stands out to you from, well, you're gonna, if you don't mind, be Crescent the man.
Speak for all men, Crescent. Speak for
Be
all men.
Crescent and be Crescent the
Um,
man.
I mean, I have the somewhat unique perspective of having read it while drunk, because I had taken a week off of work. I was literally sitting outside in the backyard, fucking drinking IPAs, and I spent the week reading Dark Age. Well, it wasn't a full week; it was a couple days, but I was drunk.
Wow.
Um,
So we have the opposite of I was too focused and like whatever, and you're drunk. Great. I like
yeah.
it.
Um, so like obviously, like of course that like the actual birth scene was so beautiful. Um, but that's it. Like it's not something that I have ever experienced. Like obviously, I've got a little bit more uh, of that paternal role now, recently, but at the time, like I had nothing like that. I had no frame of reference. But like I could still tell that it's like a very beautiful passage. And then immediately like the switch is flipped and something is off, and then to have that wound back and ripped from you,
Yeah.
it did not feel good.
You felt it as a loss.
Yeah, oh yeah. I
Have you
feel like you'd
felt
have to be some
what
sort of monster not to, but
what other deaths in the series have felt like a loss to you on this scale?
oh, on this scale,
Yeah.
Ragnar
Yeah.
maybe.
That's the only one that comes to my mind
Like that's
immediately.
Because
But
Ragnar's the
but
quick one. And Pax. I
yeah,
would say
yeah,
Pax is the other, like, quick and gone. The rest, it's like a build up.
yeah.
And this
yeah.
was a quick and gone.
Um, yeah, but the like Pax, like to a point, but we don't get that long with Pax.
No,
We're like
that's true.
we have him in the fold for like 8 chapters.
Yeah,
Like, you
that's true.
know, he's a good human and you mourn the loss because of that, but like as far as
Yeah,
the gravitas, to me the only other one is really Ragnar for sure.
Yeah.
yeah,
Shooting from the hip,
um,
that's what my gut says.
yeah, and like with Pax, it's the rereads I think that are more for me, is because we have that context of
Of the
the deeper
telematics.
relationship with Mustang, with the Telematices in general.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
It's
no,
interesting.
like Ulysses is uniquely awful as a death.
For sure. My first read through, nobody came close to Ulysses. And I won't comment on my follow-up on this, but when Pierce said that Lightbringer held the worst death, the hardest death he's written, my immediate thought was, how do you get worse than Ulysses? And I'm not going to say whether or not the death in Lightbringer is better or worse than Ulysses, but that was my thought. Rather than a lot of people went with Ragnar.
Right.
Oh,
I mean,
the worst is
that was
Ragnar.
my thought too
Yeah.
when he made that statement.
Yeah.
He's probably sitting there like, God damn, why did I make that fucking statement?
Oh yeah, because I won't lie, and Crescent knows this, that there's like every chapter. Crescent got text from me, and he was not allowed to respond to them, but he got a lot that was like, "Is this the death? Is this the death? Is this the death?" Like, as I'm just accusing like all of our favorite characters. But Ulysses, my first read through was the horrific one. I will say that this read through, and I think maybe because it was coming and I knew it was coming, I glossed over the actual death more. But the thing that hit me harder this time round was, we're going to jump to the very end. Like, I had to pause this time, like today, and just cry when Electra and Victra are reunited. And I think that is me processing Ulysses' death rather than the first time, for sure. It was the actual, there is a baby nailed to a tree.
Right. Yeah. No. This time around, I did not.
Fuck it. I could not.
Yeah.
No. It was my. This time round was the Pax and Electra getting lifted a meter off the ground by Victra. That I had to sit there and cry today, because it is. Yeah. Victra's got at least one of her children back, and that is at least a little bit. But yeah, that was the part today that got me way more than my first read through. It was that the baby is gone. This time it was the mourning process.
That's how it always is for me now too. Is
it's the stuff around it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily brush past Ulysses' death, but definitely when Electra and Pax are reunited, and when Victra is swimming, I'm getting all verklempt.
Yeah. All right, so I think for now we can move on from the death, and we can go on to what I think is one of the coolest parts is Lyria coming into her own.
Yes.
And she's realizing what's happened. She gets taken in by Bree. Is that whose family? Bria.
Bria's family, yeah.
Bria's family understands of all these child brides that are happening. And so puts herself into the danger zone to try and, save Victra and Volga. And creates, I liked Salem's wording of it today, an army of child brides. Yeah. And I had forgotten this part. I read that question this morning and I hadn't read it yet. And I was like, what do you mean an army of child brides?
What in the fuck are you talking about?
What? Which I just really liked Lyria for, of coming into her own, this is the first time she's not being reactive. She's being active. This is her plan. Yeah. She's got Fig's teeth.
The parasite.
Yeah, and it's just a really cool, scenario that plays out. And then what I think would make the world's best video game, but we'll get there. But yeah, what are your reactions to what's happening? It's so multi-layered of what Harmony is doing, what, Lyria's anger towards, what do you mean you're not standing up to them? Which to me is very short-sighted of Lyria, because it's the ongoing question. I'm a history student, so I always remember the person who's said in class of like, why did nobody ever stand up to Hitler? And it's like, people did, and they ended up with a bullet in their head. Like, you don't just, and that's, I was watching as Leary is like, what do you mean you just give them your daughters? And it's like, Leary, it's slightly more complicated than that. You don't just stand up to the warlord. You end up with a bullet in your head.
I feel like that's definitely Lyria's inexperience and age on display through the lens of that.
Yeah.
Her provincialism, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. I love her ripping through, like, in a very small sense, I love her ripping through the beats of action with this. It feels really amazing to see her come into her own and to come up with a plan and to enact the plan. The people that she interacts with on the girls' side of things are all very, minus the one that she beats up. I can't remember that one's name. But,
Tails?
yes. And then the other
Because,
ones are
okay,
also,
because
the other
there's
ones are awesome.
Freckles. I
Freckles.
might. How do I cosplay as Freckles for HowlerCon? Because I got Freckles. I got them. How do I cosplay as Freckles and have everyone be able to go, oh, you're being Freckles? Because I read that through and I was
Wear a
like,
name tag.
I want to be Freckles. I want to be Freckles. And I've got enough of them. And I'll have probably more by HowlerCon. So I want to be Freckles. But yeah, there's Tails is like the weak one that I'm pretty sure she beats up Tails, right?
Yeah, she's the snitch.
Okay,
And
yeah,
then,
the snitch. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, but for the most
which
part,
I
the
think
girls are
Freckles
all.
goes, I like the line of like, you really hate rats. Because Lyria's whole thing is like, I'll do to you what I do to rats. And then she does it, and Freckles is like,
Yeah.
what's your issue with rats? Like, again, those like, just one-liner comedic bits of like, okay, that is worse than I thought you would do. What's your issue with rats?
The that's all like very like that part's very good. There's a lot to this that's layered because I feel really bad for these red hand reds, honestly, who are just so abused that it was easy to cling to any power structure that said that they were going to do better.
Oh, for sure.
Like that makes me feel really, really bad. Like I feel bad for what's his name, Duncan.
Yes, this is it. Is
Yep.
both times through, I was rooting for Duncan. Like he has held out having a wife until a 20-year-old shows up because he knows it's wrong and then sends home the 10-year-old. Like there's a
Yeah,
10-year-old in the mix.
Vastly underaged
yeah,
child.
So he holds out until this like, and it's not even that it's a 20-year-old. It is Lyria presents herself as, hey, I want to do this. So Duncan finally is like, you know what? Great. I will take her, basically, because she is of age and willing. Like, this is the first we're seeing of those two things. I mean, we later find out that even when she says no, he doesn't know that no means no. But
Bad.
God, Duncan. But I held out both times reading this through, being like, oh, Duncan is someone who the Red Hand has just taken advantage of you have nothing else. And that's, we keep going back to modern day society. That's a huge thing that people do of when there is a power sucked, power vacuum, they want to grasp to anything that will give them. And the Red Hand's doing that in this capacity. And, or you're doing it, to stay alive. You go back to the Nazis and like there's a whole debate in modern day society of how many of those Nazis actually listened and followed what Hitler wanted? How many just wanted to stay alive? How many that was the only option? And then the women in, especially, let's say, Holland, that they were severely invaded and everything. A lot of them then gave themselves over to the Nazis and were seen as traitors, but were they doing that just to keep themselves alive? And that's what
There's
we're now
some,
seeing in the Red Hand of like,
yeah,
what is happening with that power dynamic? Like, how many of these people actually believe in the Red Hand, what they want, and how many are just doing it to stay alive?
right. Yeah. And that's because you gotta, you, as much as we like to champion the rugged individual, right? And the person singular doing it on their own, that's not really realistic, has not ever truly been super realistic. You get moments like that, individuals like that, but in the larger scope of things, we're too interconnected for that to really be
Yeah.
feasible. So yeah, I found this to be I had a I think I don't remember what day it was, but and I don't remember what set it off, but we had a very long, all of us back and forth about harmony
Yes.
in the beginning of this book, and I still hold to that. Like, as much as I dislike harmony, she fits into that discussion very well, even though she's the leader of what becomes to be a very wayward and violent movement. I view her to be one of the most tragic characters in the entire series, because that's clearly a person who had the energy to do big things that was so injured that it went horribly awry. And how, just like, if we can find empathy for Lysander in the scope of what happened to him, how could we not have empathy for Harmony?
For sure. I think that's
Yeah,
a huge thing, especially
absolutely.
at this point where we learn what's happened to her children, and her husband, which has
Yeah.
triggered all of this. And then, not getting the full, she's taken into Sons of Ares, not getting the full information. Um, 100%. I think her roots, her beginning, in the same way Lysander, the roots in the beginning, we need empathy for. It's understandable, but then the way she carries it out in the same way as we don't like the way Lysander carries it out.
Right.
Of at this point, it's like,
It's
so
not
you
redeemable. There's no excuses for it. There's just a point at which you say, you know what? If I were in that person's shoes, it would be remarkable if I didn't make these same mistakes.
100%. And it's really interesting because we actually got to, this is not released yet, but we interviewed Jenna Sharp, who plays Harmony in the
Mustang.
Sons of Ares. No, she plays Mustang, but she
Yeah.
also plays
Sorry. Yeah.
Harmony in the Sons of Ares comics. And her thing was she had to go into it not thinking about how we all do, but what does Harmony think of herself? And you are always the hero of your own story, and that's what we're at with this. Is Harmony is the hero of her own story. She thinks she's doing for good in the same way Lysander thinks he's doing for good, but the way it is carried out, and especially at this point, like, I think I had forgotten this whole child bride thing on this read through. Like, when we were having that discussion, Badger, it was me based on how she treats the refugee camps.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah. Which
now,
is absolutely disgusting and horrible.
and that's what I was doubling down of, like, you're killing the yellows who are essentially the Red Cross. But now that we learn of this, you know, um, child bride because they need more soldiers is essentially, she says it. It's not even essentially, it is what she says. of
Yeah, she's trying to breed an army.
she's trying to
Yeah.
breed an army, and it is at this point inexcusable, but we can understand where she came from at the beginning.
Yeah. You know, it's she may be the hero of her own story on the surface level, but the human element of wow,
Was that a
that's so
cat?
so dramatic. They're downstairs for the night, which they're always downstairs for the night at this time, but the fact that I'm awake right now is really getting her goat. If you have there's no way that she gets through that on an internal level and she's not second guessing herself and she's not thinking to herself, she knows we are smart humans. You'd have to be a very dumb human to not be like, I am enacting genocide on the Gamma Clan. I am, basically using the youth of the lowest low reds as cannon fodder, etc., etc. So I'm sure Harmony is of a baseline intelligence that rises above the threshold that's needed for her to recognize that these things fly fully in the face of her ideals and that there's just a massive amount of cognitive dissonance. How robust is your storytelling to then quell that, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what I think where a lot of people's nastiness comes from. I think Harmony is a very realistic character because she is very nasty, to anybody that gets in her way. And I think that's a pretty fairly realistic take on humanity. If you got all those walls and intricate fail safes built up internally so that you don't have to look at the stuff behind the curtain, then anybody who for even one moment makes you even tells you there's a curtain there, right? You
Yeah.
get pissed off at them.
For sure. Um, this is the ongoing two parallels that I would bring up is, do you think if Io had have survived, if she would have been a Harmony, or would she have been on Darrow's side? And if Lyria was not a Gamma, would she have also been on Harmony's side?
Oh,
I
Because
see EO as
that's
radical. I do
yeah.
see EO as radical. Absolutely. I think she would have ended up. I think there's a lot that separates her from Harmony, but I do think that she was willing to go there on an idealistic stage. I think there's a lot of characters pragmatic. You can kind of bucket them pragmatic, idealistic. There's some spillover between the two, sure. But as far as ideals go, like EO was pretty hard on the idealist side. I think that a lot of the characters that people have a hard time with are people that fall on the idealist side of things. If we are certainly, of course, coached as the readers to sympathize with a particular set of ideologies.
Yeah.
but I think that anybody who flies, if you're not on that train and you're an idealistic person, but you're on a different train, like we're gonna have a problem with you, as the group of the Howlers goes. And I think EO probably would have required a hell of a lot of humility to acquire scope in order to not have fallen along a similar path as Harmony.
Yeah.
Do you have a what's your take, Crescent? Same, similar, different?
uh, I actually do not agree.
Okay.
I
Ooh.
think like so EO was never mad at the Gammas. She was always mad at the Golds.
Hmm.
Harmony is I mean, like, sure, she hated that Ares was a gold, but like she is now erasing the gammas. Um, I think that Io would have been on Darrow's side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that it would have been a matter of leadership for her if she if she'd come into leadership with like a good like rising leader versus like a harmony leader? Do you think if she'd met harmony before she met like a Fitchner, would she have gone?
Mm.
Could she have been converted to the more
Yeah.
radical?
Yeah. I suppose I could see Io being able to be radicalized for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think Io as she was before she died, she was definitely more on the takedown society from within
Yeah.
Sure.
type thing.
I can see that. I could totally see that. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Lyria though. Um
Yeah, let's talk
Not a gamma.
Lyria.
Yeah,
Not a
not a gamma
gamma.
Lyria. I absolutely believe that Lyria could have been in the red hand. And like wholeheartedly.
It's the
Like
anger.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. She was so mad at the Rising. So mad at the Republic. Like,
Well, and calls out, I think the thing is, calls out multiple times about how Darrow is no longer a red. Darrow's no
yeah,
longer red. Fuck you, Pax. You're
yeah,
not a red.
yeah,
And that's it.
yeah.
It so
Pax says I'm
goes
a red.
back.
The fuck you are.
So goes back to that, you know, not necessarily thinking that reds are better, but that they have been pushed down and therefore anybody other is not okay. And that's, yeah, that's, I think Lyria would have been red hand if she was not a gamma.
Yeah,
The otherness is something that has been brought up a couple of times, and I kept on blanking on the term that I was because, anyways, xenophobia is
Yeah.
the term. Yeah,
yeah,
the xenophobia of reds as a
Yep.
theme, the xenophobia of golds as a theme. Um, I felt like I remembered, and I guess there are a couple of chapters. I mean, this goes on for a couple of chapters, 4 or 5 chapters of them enacting. Lyra gets the plan, then she goes and she
yep,
gets brought into the fold. Then she commandeers the wives, but then she gets captured.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I forgot about that. And that's just like such a brief little interlude, and then we go forward, and it's again full pedal to the metal. And I kind of remember it having gone slower, but it went really fast this read through.
yep,
Oh, see, for me, the first time was super fast. And this is the part I always say before I knew they were going to make it a video game. This is the part that it is. And it's not just Lyria. Like, so Lyria has to climb up the levels and is like spitting in, well, so spits in Duncan's face, gets captured. Then you're going through and discovering that most of the other wives have at this point created the acid spit in face. You're with Freckles. Like, it is fast paced of I'm gonna get into this, you end up in the house, how do I get to the next floor, you're gonna go through the chain, like there's people who are helping you, and I'm like whatever, and then end up in the big jail with Victra. We get Victra out and we get the full, what I would say, and it's described as she goes 2 up, 1 down, 2 up, blah, blah, blah. And I am just picturing that like all over the map, badass video game heroine that you have to just defeat this. And it talks about Victra acts before she has to defend. Right? Like that is one of the call outs. Is it's not even like she's going through the ranks, destroying them because she's not defending herself. She's acting before it is. Tries to send Lyria to a safe place. Lyria's a dumbass. who tries to follow as Victor's dropping grenades and shit, and Victor has to like motion at her of like move. And then in the middle of that, you get the Volga has started her own army up because you get, and this is we didn't say it all of, there is a moment where Lyria playing the part of the wife goes down.
I want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about that.
So
before the video game,
in Iron Gold, Ephraim says, like him and Lyria go and they have drinks, and Ephraim is like, I don't know if it's him actually being way more drunk than Lyria, or if he's actually just way more drunk than Lyria. And he says, "Red Constitution, damnably impressive." And this scene makes me think of that. It's like, so Lyria has been drugged heavily and is still able to keep it together enough to make a plan to put Hemanthus oil in these growlers to take down to the guys that are guarding the Obsidian prisoners, to get Volga free enough to start her own little rebellion.
Yeah.
And also start her rebellion against the rest of the Red Hand in the upper mine. It's like, what the fuck? You're the shit.
It's a lot of swill. She's drank a lot of swill from a young age.
Yeah.
And you get a resistance to it.
True.
Yeah. But yeah, I love this, just how it plays out. This is the part that when they talk about video games, I'm like, we better make it all the way to Dark Age. Because I don't care about the video game of Red Rising to Iron Gold. I just want to be...
Really? You don't want to duel Cassius at the gala?
No, because I'll be terrible at that. Like, me trying
Come
to... No.
on.
I want to fucking button smash my way through jumping Victra fucking everywhere. Oh, it's going to be so good.
Yep.
Think of all the side quests we're going to get. Think of the side quests in that video.
Oh, yeah. What? Yeah. It's like a... Yeah. This was one of the scenes, I think, where you get to see the raw power of a gold. Like, a singular gold versus everybody else. It's staggering. Don't jump on my computer.
Well, talk about jump. Lyria talks about how, like, she says something about things happening in slow motion, and it's that Victra getting down into the stance and then just, like, launching herself out. That it's like,
like as she melts the lock.
Yeah. That she just gets herself into the pose.
Like the horses of the hippodrome on Mercury.
Like there's no words. It's all body language. She's just like, and then you think Victra's like going into herself, but really she's just getting ready.
Yeah.
Makes eye contact just enough to know that Lyria's got a mouthful of acid, and changes nothing else about herself other than to gather herself for explosion.
Yeah.
So good. So fucking good. I love these.
For all of the gray area that exists, I love that I can lose my giving a shit about the gray area because of the action. It's nice. Like, it's the same as with the comedy. Like, the comedy is so thoroughly funny to me. Wherever it is, I can lean into it. The action, when it exists, is so very much, it's so very well done, or not even well, sometimes not just well done, but also very useful to understand a character better, or to understand the golds better, or to the world better, right? And this is no exception. This is another really good example of that.
Yeah.
And then we get an Ephraim chapter.
Well,
for-
so this is it. Is we have
Yep.
missed that Freckles, who apparently maybe I'll cosplay as. I don't know. What would I wear? Like a burlap sack? I don't know.
Yeah. No.
Paper bag princess.
Paperback Princess! We are the only people who
Paperback
understand
princess
that reference.
Cross Freckles cosplay.
Even though I have that tattoo. Yeah. Freckles apparently knows her dad knows how to use the thing so she can broadcast. And so,
Right.
okay, here's the broadcast. And Lyria is smart enough of you can't say Victra because everyone's gonna like. So it's
all
the
the enemies
enemies of the Red Hand. Who are the enemies of the Red Hand?
Yeah.
And then we get a 3 minutes on the audiobook. It is a 3-minute chapter of we know that Ephraim picks it up with Electra, and I think at that point, oh my god, is it 1 page?
3/4 of one page and about half of the other.
Yeah.
So maybe a 1 1/4 page.
And I think in that we learn that Electra and Ephraim have given up on everything, and it's been Pax who is keeping them going. And they pick it up, and then this is the fun part for me, is that Pax says we're going to broadcast that to Mars.
Yeah.
And then
So,
it's later
it's actually Ephraim that's monitoring the comms,
yeah.
Yeah.
not Pax or Electra, and he just
No.
fucking hammers it on full volume. Just like wakes them up.
Yeah, but it is Pax though that says we're gonna go to this is gonna go to Mars. And they're like, you have to be specific. And he's like,
Yes.
to Mars, which then is mirrored later
Yes.
that Victra says to Lyria, who did you send it to? And she says, to Mars. And
Yep.
you get the very, like, they don't know they're mirroring each other, but this, like, we are sending it to Mars. Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But I do, yeah, it definitely, though, that, like, Pax is still trying to stay, like, it's fine, it's great, it's whatever. And Ephraim's like, me and Electra have given up. But, yeah, so we get a very brief that, yes, Ephraim has taken the call and will broadcast it out. We'll make sure they all know. And then we go back in the mines. And we get that they've pretty much at this point defeated everybody. And we get the standoff with Harmony for a brief moment. Yeah.
I don't end up feeling good about this death, honestly. Like, I'm glad she's dead. Like, thank goodness that's done. But it almost feels like a mercy kill. I mean, it's definitely not a mercy kill.
It's not. I was going to say, this is, I think, the worst. This is the most brutal death, I think, because it's spelled out. Those are adults. They will not kill you. They will bury their eggs in you.
It's protracted. It's and psychological and heinously painful.
Which
yes,
and and it's from the deepest, darkest depths of Harmony's fears, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, as all Reds.
Every Red ever born has been taught to fear pit vipers.
Yeah.
This is my question though. If I was to go 2 hours north of me, I have pit vipers in the Massasauga rattlesnakes. Is that real? That I thought the adults killed us, and it was like I thought one bite from an adult would kill you, and it's the babies that you have the chance of living on. I'm gonna have to look.
No idea.
I have to look this up.
We don't really do poisonous snakes around here.
No. So the only poisonous snakes in Canada are the Massasauga rattlesnakes, which is 2 hours north of me. My uncle is actually a doctor up there, and if you ask him, he will tell you that you have to be a fucking tourist to get bitten. And of course, we have free healthcare. And my uncle's all for free healthcare, but would really wished he could show people who got bit by a rattlesnake their hospital bill, because they show up to him, and he gives the first anti-venom, and then you have to get helicoptered to Toronto to get the second dose of antivenom. And he has stories of like literally the last time he had to give it out was because someone wanted a snake as a souvenir. And they tried to like I have gone, this is a bizarre, as we know, I have some bizarre stories in my life. I've gone salamander hunting. That you go in March and we got really rare salamanders, but they tell you the key is to open the rocks away from you because salamanders don't run.
They don't see you.
But rattlesnakes will. And so if you open the rock away from you, the rattlesnake will zoom out. So you're fine. If you're looking for salamanders, the rock comes towards you, and the snake goes away. But I'm pretty sure current day pit vipers, the babies, you will survive the bite, and the adults you won't. So, but maybe not.
Yeah, based on just the volume of
poison that goes in. Yeah.
Also, I know that there is rattlesnakes in the Okanagan.
Ooh, interesting.
Yep. Because when I was doing the train throwing for my buddy's wife at their wedding, we had to be very careful of rattlesnakes.
Fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was just our area down, but I guess it would make... I mean, there's multiple different kinds of rattlesnakes, but
yep,
they are pit vipers. Which I once tweeted at... I did a thing similar to what Red Wing did of giving out books. I went to all the little free libraries between me and my uncle's house, and I tweeted it out, and Pierce responded, "Just be careful of pit vipers." And I was like, are you aware that I'm heading to like the one area that has pit vipers? And he's like, no, that was a lucky coincidence. And I was like, yeah, I'm heading into pit viper territory to give out these books. And he was like, oh okay. Anyway, now I need to do a deep dive into pit vipers. Anyway, so we get the very graphic, I would say probably one of the worst deaths in this. And you hear her screams. A lot of people are very controversial if we don't see the body. I'm going to say she's dead.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think Victra finished that one the way, if Victra kicks you and flings you and tells you, bye, bitch.
Oh my God.
I think that's the one. I think that we know. Bye, bitch is a full on, full send.
Yeah, that is a dismissal.
Yeah. That's as good as a body. Ooh.
Yeah, it's right up there with Bye Felicia is the reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good old Child Friday.
Oh, he was so ready for that one.
Yeah. I wonder if nobody's ever asked him that before. And
I don't think he has, because he was like, he said that. He's like, oh, I've been waiting. All right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Harmony is a character that I think all the villains in this we have to appreciate in one way or another, and where their origin story is, and without them we wouldn't have a book. And Harmony is one that, as much as she's not acknowledged in villain as much as Lysander, Atlantia, Atlas, Apollonius. What other A can I throw in there?
Ajax.
Octavia is an O.
But it ends in an A.
Same thing. She is definitely... She's the Umbridge of the series, where it is not necessarily the biggest villain, but the one we have forced our anger onto, but meets... I don't know. It's a difficult death that she suffers.
She's a hard character in general, because of course she never is not a hard person. I think that that's something that's very valid to bring up. I mean, Darrow's kind of a softie. Like in the
Yeah.
beginning, he's kind of a softie.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
I'm trying to think like some of our Cassius, softie, Mustang, cunning, but I wouldn't say hard until she had to be. Um, Probably EO was hard,
Yeah.
right? EO was hard to begin with. Harmony was hard. And who knows how she was before we met her, but as soon as we met her, she was already hard,
Yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah.
And there was no learning for her. Her all of her learning just led her to be harder. And when you start at a certain level of hardness to begin with because of life experiences, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's that's why again I just come back to her. It sucks. She and Lyria as foils to each other. She and Lyria as two very angry Reds who went different ways because of context are very interesting to me. Um, One being a gamma, one not being a gamma, and how that plays out. We went very far into this with in terms of like colorism and whatnot, modern day and Red Rising
Yeah.
colorism in the discussion in the den. I thought that was really valid to bring up, but I mean, I just think that sum total, Harmony's death was a hard one. I am glad she's dead, both because it gets her out of the way, and also just because I feel like at this point that was the most
Yeah, there's
merciful way. Yeah, like
She's not
no
getting
coming
further
back.
dungeon. Yeah.
yeah.
No.
Would you call her a complex female character, as my shirt says?
Yeah.
I wore this one because you get the Victor, the Lyria, the Volga, the Harmony, the Freckles. I'm Team Freckles.
Well, Team Freckles.
You are Team Freckles.
You can't really see on the camera, but there's a
Not
lot
even
of
a
them
little
there.
bit.
There's a lot.
Okay.
Based on the fact that I know you were at a cottage all weekend or
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. Well.
Here, we're at our last chapter, and our last chapter is a really complex one with a lot of
Fuck,
interesting things to
man.
talk
The
about.
Rising.
Yeah. Can we take a moment to please just like fully appreciate, love, nerd out on Pax?
Okay, so
Oh
we get the
yes.
Pax flying scene.
Yeah.
The
Can
Pax
we
flying
we
scene.
are a equal opportunity podcast about relationships and spaceships. Doesn't seem like it. We never focus on the spaceships, but the Pax flying
Spaceship.
scene.
Yeah.
Forget about the
Yeah.
spaceships sometimes.
So I really love that Pax is calling out things to other pilots. And they're like, "Is that a child?" And Pax is like, "Ephraim, what the fuck? Like, come on, like, back me
Yeah.
up here."
Yeah.
Yeah. Gunboat 1, Gunboat 2, I need a path. Is that a child?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's just phenomenal. I mean, I don't know, I've nerded out a whole lot on the Callaway Char flying scenes. Like, we get the racing scene that Pax sees him in, and we get one scene where he's like flying around, but also the flying of picking up Alex is Callaway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so good. It's so good.
Well,
And then
the Darrow one where
hang on.
nobody. Okay.
The race is not Callaway.
the
Alexia Z Rex.
it's not Callaway, and I
No,
thought it was
not
him.
in the
And
race. No,
okay,
no. So they talk about who's your favorite. Like Pax asks
okay,
Lyria, "Who's your favorite pilot?" And she says, "Callaway Z Char."
okay,
Because he's protecting the legions, right? And Pax says, you know, if you're talking about kills, sure, he's a class to his own. He's a gunslinger.
Got
But
it.
Alexia Z Rex, oh, she's a ballerina.
Yeah, but Calloway's a ballerina too. I mean, come on, the things that he can do with the ships are just absolute.
We don't know comparatively.
At that point, no, we don't know. But then we get to see him actually do some stuff in his flying. But then what is the ultimately we get to see Pax
Yeah.
Yes.
do the flying.
Yeah,
Oh,
Pax.
fuck yes.
Which, like, taking, like, what, a 10-meter wide ship through a fucking 13-meter gap? Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't know if we know specifically the scale of the snowball, but it's like, I think he says there's a 3-meter cushion between the waves and the ship.
Yeah, it's extremely small. It's so it just says so terribly small in that spot, and then he forgets about Ephraim thinks he forgets about the missiles, but he actually hasn't actually forgotten about the missiles at all. The thing that is really cool is that Ephraim is like, man, he flew that ship better than me, better than I ever could. And then the fact is that he has been linked in. He has, because he is a gold, he has the like requisite number of neural pathways to be able to wear a headset that mimics the kind of naturally occurring connectivity points in the blue anatomy.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
a gray could never, but
Mm-hmm.
a gold can, an interested gold can. And because Pax is not a gold, he's not trying to fly for any, he's trying to mimic the best of the best, and the best of the best are blues.
Yeah. So I found the passage specifically. The torch ship looms before us, the gap between water and hull barely thicker than a razor.
Yeah.
Acceleration pins me to my seat. The sea is less than 2 meters below. If we so much as nick it, it'll ricochet us up into the hull of the torch ship at just under the speed of sound. Like,
Yeah.
that's less than my height from the hull of the ship to the water.
That's like when you see a sports car like go zoom underneath the semi.
Fast and Furious underneath the semi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like infinitely faster. Not infinitely, but exponentially faster. It's so good. Yeah. Oh my god. It's and then
this is such a good scene.
It's so
And Ephraim's like, I can handle the G's, okay? Like, Pax is like, you might wanna sit down, you might wanna grab a sick bag. And Ephraim's like, I got this, young man. And then barfs his fucking guts out.
Well, and makes the comment about the kids don't even notice. Like, not even as Pax, like, whatever, somehow trained himself to do this, but Electra is like, yeah, sure, okay. Like, just chilling. I just imagine Electra sitting there like, I know what he fucking does. Like, sure, I must sit here and hang out, because I know.
I grab the sick bag just in time to hurl up my breakfast into it. Electra cackles and pets my head like I'm a puppy.
Like Electra's like,
and what are they singing? I ask. Still a bit woozy from the G's. The kids seem to barely have noticed.
Yeah, and then it's the song of Persephone.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Pax, like he has the moment where he's like, he sees how Pax, like we don't get to see that through Mustang. We don't get to see that through Victor. We get to see it through Ephraim, how Pax is greeted. Like they're like, oh, you did that?
Yeah, they see the
legend.
The headset.
They see the headset.
Like, oh fuck. And it's not like they're surprised. It's like
they're like, Darrow's son.
Oh yes. Of course, the child of prophecy.
Yes, the child of
Yeah.
Basically.
prophecy. Oh my gosh, it makes me so so excited. Like this one chapter, I did cry most of the way through
Well,
this
that's
chapter because
it.
it
So
was
we get,
so exciting and
because you get
cool.
that, and then immediately it's that they run, and Ephraim just describes her as the gold with the swollen belly, as if she had just been pregnant, and she catches the
Yeah.
kids and raises them up a meter high, and like, I fucking bawled at that. And then we get the Ephraim Volga and him yelling rabbit. That you
Yeah.
get the Ephraim Lyria reunion. Like, this is just
Yeah.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Volga reunion gets me every single time.
Yeah.
Every time. Um Are you wounded? You are shaking. And then this is the one and only time that they have like a real proper hug.
Yeah.
And then Victra storming up on them while it's happening.
Which
Yeah.
then they have to call
Victor,
her off, like,
don't.
no! No,
Pax is
Victra!
like, come on!
Who gives it to them? Victra backs off. I'm like, fuck, fine. Like,
She's able to find the she's able to rationalize why it's necessary because of course she this is where she's doing like her mental emotional psychological big picture economic breakdown for the Julii
yeah.
economics, right, which is an economics apart from actual fiscal economics, right, and she this is where she's like, man, this is where I will find a reason to get over it.
Yeah. Where are we at?
We're
We
basically to
get,
the father daughter scene.
yeah, uh, Ephraim and Volga share their only real hug.
Hmm.
And then it's just the sweetest thing.
Yeah.
And then Volga is about to kill Ephraim until Volga says stop.
Victor is gonna
Wait,
kill Ephraim
Victor is
until,
going to kill
yeah,
Ephraim until
until
Volga says
Volga
stop.
says
Yes,
stop.
sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that there's been so much growth from Victra, and like the relationship has grown so much between Lyria and Volga and Victra
Yeah.
that Volga telling Victra to stop registers immediately.
Yeah. Which
It's
I
the
don't.
it's the Julii economic. We have the Julii genetics,
Yep.
The
and we also
Julia
have the
economics.
Julii economics.
Yeah, but I don't think previous to this, like, do we even? Well, maybe Darrow or Severo could have told, but I don't think that if Mustang. I think we know at this point that if Mustang had have said stop, Victor wouldn't.
Oh no,
But,
definitely not. I mean, we don't necessarily know at this point, but you can spoil just a little bit.
yeah.
You learn.
So, and I will say at this point, just along that note, is this is where Pax learns that his mom is alive.
Yeah,
Yep. Yes.
Because Pax, leading up to this, thought that he pretty much didn't have parents, and he still doesn't know what's happened to Darrow, which I think is why, in my mind, it's not just Victra getting the kids, but also Pax getting an adult he fully trusts.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
it's the
Yeah,
twofold.
it's not just Victra getting something back. It's
It's that the
also Pax
kids, yeah.
and Electra.
And Electra, but Pax for sure has thought he's
Yeah.
lost everything, and at least there is one adult there that he has loved his whole life and will continue to love him. But he does learn that his mom is alive. Yeah. Yeah, this whole scene, I think I just bawled through this afternoon.
Oh yeah,
Sitting there like
I
weeping.
absolutely misty eyed through the whole thing
Yeah.
Yeah.
every time.
No.
There's they get all of the interaction. There's also, we saw Lyria contend with losing Ulysses. We know, obviously, Victor did, but we also get to see, you know, Ephraim kind of stick his foot in it a little bit. He's like, "Oh, what'd you go off and do?" And
Yeah.
Volga's like, I wanted to see I wanted to see Ulysses." Oh, oops.
Um,
Oops.
oops. Which we do get the. So we know at this point um, that obviously Lyria has the nephews and nieces, but we do learn of Volga has learned, like, knows she cannot currently give birth, and knows how much money it would be if she was to
Yep,
get, because Lyria says, like,
20 million credits.
yeah. So we get that, but then also Volga learns, Ephraim gets to just tell her who her father is.
No, he doesn't.
And then he
He's
doesn't.
he could, but he doesn't.
He chooses not to.
Oh! Oh! I thought, okay. I
Yeah,
listened wrong.
no,
He does it.
he
He does it.
specifically does not.
He says it all. He has an inner monologue where he says it.
Oh!
So
Okay,
it's like
so
he says
then
it.
I was not paying attention. Yeah.
Yeah. Nope. Nope. But then he doesn't, after all.
Yeah.
And then they go visit Trigg's statue.
Yes!
Yep.
And Pax, we remember Pax is wearing the ring the whole time and gives the ring back to Ephraim.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's so much in that one chapter. Fuck, man.
I This is the chapter. Well, this is the culmination of getting to see the relationship of Volga and Ephraim finally step into its fuller, like the reality of what always was, but
Yeah.
actually kind of healthy, for the first time. And and we have been seeing that enacted with Pax as sort of a surrogate for
Yeah.
Volga, and Ephraim as a surrogate father for Pax. And
Yep.
it's been very interesting how that trade-off has happened. And it's something that has always stood out to me as, again, if we're talking like representation, this is my favorite. Ephraim is my favorite representation of a gay man in the series. Something else could happen. If something else happened, that'd be great. But we're not. It's not a trope. It's not
Yeah.
a. There's not. It's not like exaggerated. It is just a man who is a gay man being going from a morally gray character because of his actions
Yep.
to becoming a fully actualized human that fits into a community and who is showing up as a member of that community in a very meaningful way.
Yep.
And I think that's fucking awesome. I
For
I
sure.
would I would love to see more of that for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, who know? I if nothing else, I think I think, there's some people who sometimes I scratch my head. Thankfully, I don't think there's any in the Howler's Den that wouldn't say that, right? I think for the most part, we are all of one mind in that way. And I think that, if we can just center that in the dialogue moving forward. That's the win, even if we don't even get it in text. If we just know that as a sci-fi fandom, like this is the new gold standard. This moment, this type of character, this complexity of character
Yeah,
moving forward.
for
And
sure.
I think we get that with F.
Yeah, 100%. I love that for Ephraim of, he gets the complexity of, we don't know if he ever actually wanted kids, but gets to become the father figure. And it has, he takes it and is so good with it in comparison to, like, they talk about Seffi is good with kids. I'm like, Seffi's fucking terrible with kids. We've had this discussion of, no one else could do with Pax and Electra what Ephraim did, and he's so complex in all of his emotions, and we get to see him through his drug addict ways and his grief and everything. And I think especially in this chapter, we still see that grief. He gets Trigg's ring back. That is a hard moment. If you have lost someone, like a husband, if you have lost that significant other, that is a difficult moment, but it is different than we have seen him in Iron Gold, because he's had that full character arc and sobering up and all of that. Like, he represents, I think, so much to so many different communities, so LGBT, but also like addictions, and just he's not. He's the mid, well, or Gray's mid colors, but he's that middle of the line rather than Lyria. We know has hit that refugee status versus the golds, and he is the one holding the middle, and he gets such a great fleshed out character. But as you were saying, like, it would be tremendous as Pierce carries on this and has more representation, and I hope he is not the last of the LGBT community. But, I'm so happy that he gets to be as complex as he is, as fleshed out as he is.
A full ass human being with all the nuances, and we are here for it, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, where are we? Is that
I think
it? Does
that's
that?
it.
I mean, we
Like,
kind
I
of.
mean, that last chapter is a lot, but I think we've covered everyone's reunion,
Well,
essentially.
Ephraim also basically has to say goodbye to Volga.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He takes off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Like he's on the next mission already.
Yep. Because Pax asked him to.
Because he's such a good stand-in dad. Yeah. So, but yeah, that is it. This is, I mean, we are now recording. This is our longest recording at 4 hours and 15 minutes. 4:15. And, I mean, sure, we took some
Badger, you're such a bad influence. Such a Badger influence.
I've got stamina. What can I say?
Well, it's that, and you, I think, bring us to a different level than anyone. Like, I love all our other guest characters. I love that. But you
don't get us wrong, everybody else. You are fucking fantastic.
You are fabulous.
We love you for coming on.
But Badger makes us think things that we didn't think about before, and go into a different. So,
Badger brings a spoon for our brains.
Yeah.
Hey, with the bourbon, let's get all the alliteration in there. With the Badger and the brains and the bourbon.
And the bourbon. I did drink another
and the beer.
And the beer.
I'm on my third beer. This one is called Life in the Clouds. Slightly nicer than the Cradle to Grave. Starry Night was good.
Starry Night's fine. Cradle to Grave is just the totally irreverent one.
It's great. I love it.
It was just in my fridge. It just fit. But yes.
Now we need a beach ball reference. We got
Merlot is getting timed out hard for that one. If anyone's if you're not in the Howler's Den, Merlot decided to make it was a gif of a beach ball going around military guys because of Daxo's head. I timed him out, and I didn't even realize Salem had timed him out. It's the first time we've had a double timeout. Double timeout in the den. Woo!
Like Double Jeopardy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And normally when we do the joke timeouts, which that would be, it's a minute, and I did them for 5. It's like, no, 1 minute is not enough. I did them for 5.
It was cruel and unusual on his part.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so unusual, but definitely cruel.
Just cruel. But yeah, thank you for everybody who has made it to 4 hours and 17 minutes. You're fantastic. Thank you, Badger, for joining us.
Hit us with a snowball in the comments if you've got this far.
Join the Howler's Den so that you
Also
don't
that.
have to have the abbreviated Badger version with at only
No.
4 hours. You can have me speaking these things and going into great length and the 3D answers all day, every day.
I will say that is, Badger, me and you go back and forth all the time, that I greatly appreciate, that we have such open dialogue and such, especially me and you, and I mean, Summit's usually there for it. There's a few others that we know it's that safe space that we can talk about these things, and we have differing opinions at some point, but it is always fantastic, those questions of the day. I'm not usually in them because I know my voice gets given here, but we love the questions of the day that Salem asks for the read along. There's the questions of the day that are absolutely random, and I'm normally in those, but we appreciate those, and Badger, the voice you give to everyone is fantastic. So thank you so much for...
Hey, yeah, that's what we're here for. We want everybody to chime in. We want to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the Den is a great place because we get to have other people's perspectives on the books, and it's great when we all agree, and it's also, we grow as humans and grow as a fandom when we get to adjust our opinions, and expand.
For sure.
That's special. It's super special. And also we laugh fucking constantly. And that's also special.
Yeah.
So,
well, this is my favorite thing, is I think the two biggest discussions I've been in the fandom is the EO discussion that I, way back in January
immediately
opened
after joining the Den,
and got obviously, and I learned more things about me, EO, all sorts. And then you get into the discussions about, like, who makes their bed that starts a fight, or the ongoing pancakes, waffles, French toast debate that people are, and we're on equal footing of, you could be just as angry at me about how I don't like EO as you can be as angry at me about how I'm team waffle. Am I team waffle or team French toast? I'm anti-pancake.
Team French
That's all
toast,
you know.
Then waffle, then pancake.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Down with the pancakes. You can be angry about me with that, and it is a safe space for you to be angry. And also, I don't make my bed.
Remember, we will ration your maple syrup if you argue too hard.
Listen, that's the control we have. We control your maple syrup.
You get grade B maple syrup from now on.
Too. That's it. That's the only access to maple syrup anybody has.
Yeah. Fuck you, Vermont. Also having maple syrup. Fuck you, Vermont.
There's this cut with
we should invade Vermont.
Listen, they've also
bring them into Canada.
Yeah, the amount of also emotional toll I've taken in Vermont. We're just gonna name this episode "Fuck You, Vermont."
Oh, I was thinking it was going to be Tragedy and Torchships.
Oh, that's better. Okay, it's gonna be Tragedy and Torchships. Fuck you, Vermont.
Yeah, brackets. Fuck you, Vermont.
Fuck you, Vermont.
Brackets. Right. Feel free to break up watching it into 4 different segments.
4. Yeah. All right, we're signing off. This is ridiculous.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Good morning. Whatever.
It's morning here. Good.
I'm done.